Mine started at an early age of around 8, 9, or 10, honestly. I used to love playing with little green army men. And my favorite one was the one with the flamethrower. And we would literally get out there. This is why men don't live long, because you average it out. We would line up the army men and all their bunkers and stuff and take lighter fluid and matches. And occasionally take firecrackers, M80s, and bury them in the dirt and blow them up too. So that's my love for the military. Started back then with army tanks. So, growing up, we would go around and play war with Roman candles and bottle rockets and literally shoot at each other point blank. So, just always liked blowing things up. So, guys, I went to college at Furman University. I got into the ROTC program there. Loved it. My chance to get out, I could pick any service I want, branch, as far as MOS. And I wanted to be a tanker, believe it or not. So got out and trained, became a tanker. But my service was limited to I was like Army Light, like Saccharin. I was National Guard and Reserves on that. So, but thankfully we have guys like Mike and some others who actually served in war and put their lives on the line for the country on that. But so my military service was that realm right there. My faith journey, growing up in Fort Mill, Sis Memorial Baptist Church, and also Nazareth, a little bit, other churches. We popped around, but primarily Sis Memorial Baptist. Grew up there, in and out of church, and I was initially, I gave my life to Christ when I was about 16 years old, and it was the result, I'm going to move around a little bit, the result of the pastor there. Loved him dearly. His kids were friends of mine. We grew up together in Fort Mill in the band and things like that. But it's one night when the pastor and like a whole busload of deacons comes to your house, and they sit down, and it's like, in Jeff, somewhat like a rainbow vacuum salesman coming to your house. You got to either buy the vacuum or get saved. Ain't nobody leaving yet. That's how I referenced it and stuff. But it was a great night. My younger brother, myself, and my mom, who I think had been contemplating that at that point. So was saved at 16. And then just, a little story there too. I have a great memory. I remember things like, not quite pre-womb, but close to it. But I remember the night at Sis Memorial Church, the baptism up, behind the choir pit, big glass front on it, and us, my brother, my mom getting baptized. But before us went a couple. And the lady had like Marge Simpson hair, I guess a wig on or something, and left it on. It was like up high. So we all got baptized, didn't think nothing about it. Going home at the red light from the church, car in front of us, her hair was like to the side. That's the kind of stuff I remember, but that was my big memory from being baptized at age 16. But about 4 years ago, I think God worked on me a little bit, was leaning into me to lean into Him a little bit more. And so about 3 years ago, on April 7th, rededicated my life to Christ and got rebaptized on that. So, my younger daughter had, through the New Spring Church in Anderson, South Carolina, had gotten really involved there and had been baptized a couple years earlier. So her faith encouraged me, Eric and some other friends in our F3 group. It's a workout group, which is workouts. It's F3. It's fitness, fellowship, and faith. So that group there in this, brought me back to God again. I hadn't strayed very far. Still a sinner, but maybe less of a sinner. It wasn't a bad sinner then, but still needed to, redirect. As a teenager, I felt like maybe it wasn't all in, like maybe because I didn't know what I didn't know at that point. But 3 years ago, it was another solid commit on that, and we're trying to walk that faith as well on that. Kind of looking at some of my notes here. But I'm here tonight. I gave you my military service part of this, but I think God gives us all gifts. You may not know what your gift is. It may be the gift of being patient with other people. It may be the gift of just listening to other people, and people need that. It may be the gift of service, different things like that. But I think one gift that God gave me early on, and I didn't realize what it was until a handful of years ago, and my son pointed out to me, and it was the gift of perseverance. I hadn't really thought about it. I hadn't really thought about my childhood much, at all. I wouldn't go back and change anything, and you're going to hear my story in a minute. You're going to go, I would have changed all of that. But I think God gives us a journey to be on for specific reasons, to make you stronger, to make you wiser, to make you something, whatever He wants to make you to be on that. But my gift from God early on, and I didn't realize it, I've always had it, I guess, but no one pointed out to me and said, hey, you have this one. Well, maybe I do, And there may be other gifts too. We all can, we all can be kind and consider other people, and that's a gift as well on that. But so again, I'm prefacing this here, my conversation with, I would not change a thing that's happened to me in the past. It's all God's will, and it's all for good on that. So my childhood started in Fort Mill on Mill Hill. My dad worked for Duke Power. He was a lineman. My mom, I guess, stayed at home. And I had an older brother who was 8 years older, and a younger brother who was about a year and a half. And I started having a lot of vivid memories around, I probably guess, 4 years old. And my dad was a big guy, tall guy, tough guy, from what I remember. And at some point, something happened to him where something changed in him, and he became abusive to my mom. Kind of went off on the deep end on that. So as a young toddler almost, I saw my dad come into the house, and at that point, I remember standing looking at, I could see the side of his pocket. He had his hand out of his pocket knife out, blade out on it, to tell my mom to get in the bathroom, I'm going to kill you. And seeing him chase her around the backyard, grab her by the hair, pull her down on the ground, beating her, and you think, he's going to kill me too. You don't know. You don't know. So as a small child, exposed to things like that, and to the point where at one point we had to kind of go in hiding. Me and my younger brother and older brother. I think my older brother may have stayed with my grandparents some. But we lived downtown Fort Mill, in town, and my dad came by one day. He's going to get us. He's like, y'all get in the truck, you're going with me. And my uncle lived a few doors up on another street. My brother was there. He was, I guess, maybe 14 at the time. And he was a bit of a hunter. He had a rifle and stuff in the house. And, we're in the backyard, me and my brother against the garage wall. He's, I guess, 3.5 or 4. My brother's 30 feet away. My dad's like, y'all get in the truck. We knew we got in the truck, we might be dead. We just knew. My brother had his rifle out. He's like, you're not taking, Tracy and Jeff. He's like, get in the truck. And my brother shot him in the leg in the yard. Shot his own dad in the leg so he couldn't get us. We ran off, and I don't think I ever saw him again. So this all probably happened within a few months. At some point, trying to hide from him, I hope not be too graphic here, but at some point he got my mom somewhere and tried to kill her. He beat her to the point where I remember, and as a child, we've actually got some counseling somewhere, but it wasn't really a big thing there. But my uncle brings in a bag of her clothes from the hospital that were bloodied and brought them home, and I think she was lucky to survive. And when we did get to see her, she's black and blue all down the side of her arms and head all busted up. And as a result of that, those beatings and that severe abuse, that she's healthy now. She's 86 years old. She has Alzheimer's. CTE is a legit thing, and it damaged her brain where she led a great life, but as she got older, dementia set in, which is a cause of CTE. So, result of that stuff that happened, I'm 58, 52 years ago, she had Alzheimer's for 8 or 9 years. There's consequences and stuff on that. So that ain't the bad part. I'm trying to throw a little laughter here just to keep face on this. But shortly thereafter, after he just about killed my mom, I guess he had a girlfriend somewhere in Fort Mill. And one night he goes to her house, shoots her, and goes kills himself. Here's my mom. We're 6 years old by then. She's widowed with 3 kids. She's been beaten within inches of her life, trying to make ends meet. And so she meets another guy in Fort Mill. Maybe she didn't make good decisions, I don't know. But there's a lot of great years in the span of 4 years there, a lot of great memories. There are also a couple of scary memories again that came up where they would argue sometimes, and one would go to the car, the other one would be outside with a pistol shooting in the air. Like, this thing's normal, I guess. To the point where they were going to separate. I was probably around 9 or 10 then, and we had seen this go on for 3 or 4 years, and some guys had come one day to get some equipment in the backyard, and I'm out there with maybe a 9 or 10-year-old with a shotgun. I don't remember it being loaded, telling the guy he can't get the stuff. My mom wasn't there, and I don't know why, but when they left, I remember we had a babysitter. And I go to the front porch, and I see my mom do it with him, and they're driving off, and I'm shooting in the air with a 410 shotgun, and the babysitter's going, you probably shouldn't do that, but, but it happened, So, and then one night, this was kind of the final straw there, of course, but my brother and I sitting in the kitchen on Saturday night, in a big plate glass window, the kitchen table there, putting stamps in a book, of all things. You collected stamps and put them in books, and it's our thing to do. And on this Saturday night, and outside that picture window was a newer wing, kind of a living room with another picture window that looked out down a hill and up another hill. And all of a sudden, we hear glass breaking and just shattering everywhere. And we're scared that they had been fighting and running off, and we're crawling down the hall screaming. And my brother's 7 years old, and my mom's like, you got to go back in there and call the police. There was no 911 in 1970 something, and the phone was right where we'd been sitting. And there's glass doors there, there's windows, and windows been shot out. And I had to crawl in there and get the phone book and get the sheriff's number out of the phone book and call them, and cars show up. And evidently, he had hired someone, or him, we never knew, that to try to shoot us. And the bullets hit below the window on the couch, hit above the window, hit outside below the window. They were aiming for me and my brother in the window, but neither one of us, we came within several inches of bullets hitting us. Grew up with that. So when I first told parts of this story, probably 5 years ago, to a friend, he's like, how are you not in jail? How are you not an abusive father or husband? Or how do you not in family court not paying child support? Because learned behavior you grew up with role models is what you kind of become, sort of, sometimes. But luckily, God early on gave me the perseverance of somewhere around the 3rd or 4th or 5th grade to want more than that. And I remember sitting in maybe a 4th grade class, and they had divided the class into two, like slow readers over here, probably can do that today, and excelling readers over here. And I remember they always had better things to read. It seemed more interesting over there. Just like, I want that ice cream, I don't want to sit over here, I want some of that, So around 4th and 5th grade, something kind of changed in me. I think as God, leaning in, give me some fortitude and perseverance to want a little bit more. I remember maybe 5th grade going to my teacher literally and saying, hey, they had sent letters home that I was a slow reader and not excelling, because a lot was going on back home then. So in that same time period, I went to the teacher and said, what do I need to do to get to this level I need to be at, where I should be at? She's like, well, A, B, C, and D. If you go through all these modules, or whatever they called it back then, you can be up here. And I remember just applying myself as hard as I could to get from whatever a D reader might be to maybe an A-type reader in class. And that's my first visible or known example of being trying to strive for a little bit more than what was there on that. So, but all that stuff there, some horrible stuff happened, but it was all for a reason. It made me a different person. Made my brothers a different person. My older brother, 14 years old, he ended up being more or less a dad to us. He was thrown in the forefront on that. So I think in some ways it benefited some of us in different ways, in a positive way, and I think that was God's gift. And I think I kind of call God's first gift to me was a gift of perseverance, to keep going on that. As I got into high school, was excelling, doing pretty well. I was in band. I was a band geek, much like I think Eric Ryan was. Band's a cool group of kids. So on that, I played a low brass instrument like he did, although we're 17 years apart or so, but same band, still band. Where you go. And loved it. And actually, my son's a band director now, so it's kind of cool that he didn't follow my footsteps, but he found a love of music and is an educator in Spartanburg County on that. But I had doing pretty well. My mom, we were pretty much still poor. She was barely getting by. She was borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. She was borrowing from this finance company to pay this one. And she would send us in to pay the bill because she didn't want to go in and be embarrassed paying half the bill. And did that countless times. So where's your mom? She's at card. Well, tell her we want to see her next time. Okay. Rinse and repeat on that stuff. So in high school, here I am. I got into my college of my choice. It was my dream school. And how do I pay for this? My mom can't pay for this. And at that point, my mom was getting widow benefits for us, my son and my brother and I. And I was counting on some of that money to go to college with back in 1980. I graduated in 82 in high school. And the government came up that year and said, hey, if you're not already enrolled in college in the spring of 1982, you don't get anything. But other people who had other gifts, it was our guidance counselors, it was people at Winthrop University here in town who came up with a plan that said, hey, we're going to let some high school kids enroll in night classes the spring of their senior year so they could keep their Social Security benefits through college. Even though it reduced 25% each year and you only got it for 3 instead of 4, but they leaned in and created a program that probably had 50 kids or so from York County go to school at night, full-time in college, while you're in high school your senior year. But it meant to me, you still got to pay that $250 fee. That wasn't free. Nothing's ever free. So my mom didn't have it, I was cutting grass, mowing yards, but you can't make that kind of money cutting grass. So, we asked a neighbor that was kind of a close friend. I had to sit down as a 17-year-old at that point and ask this grown man for $250 so I could go to Winthrop, so I could have money to go to buy books in college and stuff. But thankfully, between the guidance counselors, professors at Winthrop, the administration, they helped a lot of kids out back then to kind of make ends meet. So, and their gift may have just been their jobs, doing their jobs to the nth degree, Not just saying I'm going home at night, well, what about these kids here are going to do Social Security? Let's figure this out for them. And that was kind of their gifts, I think, on that. But, going to that night class meant I had to give up I actually had a bus route when kids could drive buses back then and build character and stuff on that, which meant I couldn't afford my high school ring anymore. So I go to my girlfriend and say, hey, I need that ring back off your chain. That was kind of embarrassing. But it was all for the greater good on that. But, none of that is woe me. None of that is any of that. It's just, that was my journey that God set for me on that. And it gave me the understanding that as other trials came up, it wasn't really going to be any easier for me or for y'all or whatever. It meant that I understood that there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel because God provides that light in the tunnel. And it's going to be hard as heck sometimes, but you're going to get through it, on that. That's kind of the lesson I got from the perseverance on that. But God gives us all the gift of salvation first. Then He bestows upon us, if you want it or not, various other gifts. We may never recognize what those gifts are on that. But I'm fortunate that at some point in my past, I recognized what mine was. And trying to use it where I can. So, what gift has God given to y'all? Is it the gift of providing a great meal for a great group of people to come together? Whatever it is, I guess my question for y'all tonight would be to, look deep inside of yourself when you get a moment and say, hey, what is my gift? You may know what it is on that. But at the same time, that gift, the most impactful person that I could say in my life was probably my high school girlfriend's stepdad. I never had a great role model at all growing up. My mom had some decent boyfriends, some not so decent boyfriends, but after about 10 years old, they ran out of ammunition. No more gunplay on that. But his name was Boyce Harwell. They lived in Rock Hill. His wife, her mom was a realtor here in town with Old Southern Realty, and knew him for a period of 15 months. And he was the most remarkable man I ever met. If you ask my kids right now, either my daughter or son, say, which person influenced your dad to become hopefully a great father, they could tell you who it was. But I told them, talked to him, talked to my old girlfriend about it, sent them cards. So you never know who you may impact. He's in his 80s now. I'm 58. First met him, I was 16 to 17 years old. And he had no idea that he made that impression upon me at that early age, just by being present. He didn't come to me, have a heart-to-heart talk, tell me about the birds and the bees or the wives or whatever. He was just there and saw how he interacted with his two daughters, his wife, and I'm like, I want to be like him. He's a cool guy. And that's who I kind of model myself upon. So God put him in my life at some point. I think I've done a great job raising my kids. They're gainfully employed. So, on that. They give back, and they give a lot more than they take from life. So, and it's directly impacted because of this girlfriend's stepdad in 1980 to 82. You know, who knew on that? So you may be impacting somebody today that you may never know about. God's not going to give us a report card and say, hey, you impacted him, hey, A, B, C. No. It's God's time, God's terms. But we're all impacting somebody. And I was impacted as well on that. That's my journey. I'm sticking to it on that. But even though there are some bad sounding things in there, it was all, I think, it was God's plan, and I wouldn't go back and change anything on that. It's just the way it was on that. So, thank you all for coming tonight. Appreciate everything. I wish my jokes were better, but I'm also
Whoa, don't wander.
I do have one more thing that I almost overlooked. This verse here, I think, kind of sums this up a little bit tonight, is Romans 5, and it's primarily verses 3 to 5. I'm going to read from 1 to 5, and it's the SEV version. Therefore, since we have been justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. Through him we have obtained access by faith into this grace in which we stand, and we rejoice in hope for the glory of God. But verse 3 is my favorite part. Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit that has been given to us. On that. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Stay.